Okay, good evening. This is Brother Wolf, and this is HS 345. We're in Section 3, and this is Group 3, and it's Case 3. So lots of threes there. And I will turn it over to the group to present. Whenever you guys are ready, feel free to start.
Hi class, this, as Brother Wolf said, this is case number 3, and it's concerning the Rio Grande Medical Center, and our group consists of Colton Hammer, Bradley Holmes, Ty Seymour, and Brent Joyce. Go ahead and change the slide. So the background of this case, as I said, it has to do with the Rio Grande Hospital. It has an outpatient center combined with a dialysis center, which they're in the same building. The outpatient center takes up 80,000 square feet, whereas the dialysis center occupies 20,000 square feet. The majority is taken up by the outpatient center. And the outpatient center needs more space as it's continuing to grow and bring in more revenue. So the managers of the hospital decided to move the dialysis center out of the main building and into a new building with the same square footage, but it's in a different building blocks away from the hospital. And so the point of that all would be that that the outpatient center would take over that extra 20,000 square feet left occupied once the dialysis center moved to a new building. And so the questions with this case is what is the best way to allocate the new costs based on the new situations among both departments. Next slide. So this shows the allocation before the move to kind of give you an idea of the situation between the dialysis center and the outpatient center. You can take a look there and see the allocation. Okay, next slide. First question asks if it's fair that the dialysis center should suffer in profitability from the move, even though it had nothing to do with it. And we thought that it is fair because the outpatient clinic was receiving more revenue and it made more financial sense to move the dialysis center. In order to make more room for the outpatient clinic with hopes of creating more revenue. So in a business sense, it kind of made sense that the move had to happen. And so even though the dialysis center did suffer more financially, in the whole scheme of things, it made sense. It made sense to have the outpatient clinic take up that 20,000 square feet in the hospital. Next slide. The second question asks if the dialysis center should be charged actual facility costs for its new location. And we thought that, yeah, the dialysis center should be charged actual facility costs for its new location. Although it's not actually technically in the hospital, it's in a new building blocks away from the hospital, it'll still accrue overhead costs. So in order to satisfy department heads, they may want to consider new cost drivers that would make the cost seem more fair across the board, because that's a lot of times the point of allocation, is to make sure there's a fair distribution of overhead costs between the department heads. So go ahead, Brent, on the next slide.
All right, so the third question asks if the $400,000 allocation was correct, and we just confirmed the numbers of the loan just to make sure that was accurate, and we found that that was basically accurate. And Ty, I believe, took this question and decided that it was the correct allocation, and that once the 20th year hit, that allocation would change from the 400,000 divided by the square footage divided by just the other cost, which would return it to the $15 per square foot rather than the 120. Question number 4 talked about how they noticed that they were getting charged $800,000 for the pharmacy supplies that they were selling, that only really cost the pharmacy $400,000. And so this question discussed whether or not it was fair for the dialysis center to be charged basically full cost when really they're bringing in $400,000 worth of revenue. And I believe that that is the correct way to do it, because when we looked at, first off, when we looked at all the different methods for allocation, none of them took any consideration of profits that might be generated from one profit center to another, or even from a profit center to a service center. So that was kind of the main driving force behind the decision there. But also, we looked at how the pharmacy may charge all the departments that way. That may be the way that the hospital runs, is that each individual department is independent of one another. So if they wanted to change that, that could be something they looked at on a whole scale level. But we thought the way it stood now is that was probably the correct way to do it. Question number 5 looked at how the allocation of the funds could be different than what was presented with the initial allocation. And Colton took this question, and he thought that the best way to probably do that was to make it fair for everyone, is to, instead of taking the whole facility cost and putting it onto the dialysis center, to rather take that $100,000 additional that the dialysis center is being charged, and simply move that over to the facility's cost for the outpatient center. He believed that this was the best way as a compromise to kind of satisfy the dialysis center being basically kicked out of their homes, so to speak, and moving, and also be a good compromise for facilitating the big increase in costs that they received. With that reallocation, as you can see, I'll actually go back for a second, but as you can see, is they're now going to be turning a profit instead of losing money. And I believe that is the end of our presentation.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I'm not going to comment. Sorry, I'm going to mute you guys and echo on my end. So I'm not going to comment too much about the content of the presentation, because I'd like that to be done mostly in the I'd like that mostly to be done in the discussion board. But as far as kind of the format and the presentation style, you guys did a very nice job. Short and sweet, to the point. And so just if you do, as we were discussing at the beginning of the presentation, before I started the recording, you know, kind of engage the class, review the other group's presentation, kind of compare and contrast differences and different approaches, that would be great. Excellent work. And any last minute comments or questions from your group?
I don't have any now.
Okay. Well, very good. Well done. And if you'll post the slides in the group discussion area, then I'll post this recording as soon as it processes. So have a good night.
Thanks.